You're listening to School Leadership Reimagined, episode number 41.
Welcome to the School Leadership Reimagined podcast, where we rethink what's possible to transform your school. If you're tired of settling for small wins and incremental improvement, then stay tuned to discover powerful and practical strategies for getting every teacher in your school moving towards excellence. Now, here's your host, Robyn Jackson.
Hey builders, welcome to season 4 of the School Leadership Reimagined podcast. I'm your host, Robyn Jackson, and this is episode 41. I am so excited to be back. I missed you this summer, and it's been a bit of a crazy summer because this summer we actually did 2 Builders Labs. We did one on the West Coast and then one on the East Coast. And both of them were they were just amazing. I'm still glowing from them. You know, one of the things I love about Builders Lab is that it gives me an opportunity to work in a very intimate way with a small group of really committed builders. And over the 3 days, we get to know each other. I learn about their schools. We resolve a lot of challenges that they're facing in their schools. And we start developing a plan that's going to help them turn their schools into success stories this year. And the success stories are already starting to roll in. You know, things that we started working on in the implementation lab, people are actually putting into place and they're already seeing results. So I can't wait to share some of those stories with you throughout the year. And I just have to tell you, it was an amazing summer. The people who come to Builders Lab are some of the best people. I got to know them. You know, we've stayed in touch. And, you know, that's the thing about Builders Lab. We don't just have a conference and then, you know, kind of throw you back into the water and tell you to swim for yourself. We stay in touch. So we've already had a follow-up masterclass private training with the people who are in Builders Lab this summer. We are, you know, continuing to correspond because I'm now invested in those schools and I'm invested in hearing those success stories. And we're not going to stop until they become success stories. So I'm really excited about that. Now, there are a couple of things that are kind of cool that are happening. So before I kind of jump in to what we're going to be talking about today, I want to tell you about a couple of things that are happening that are pretty cool. So the first thing is that my editor actually came to Builders Lab this summer. And when she saw the model that we're teaching, when she saw the Mindsteps model, she said, that's a book. And so I'm happy to announce that I am working on my 11th book. And it's going to be all about this Buildership model, this Mindsteps model that we've been using and teaching for years. But this time, instead of writing a book and kind of coming out of my, you know, book writing cave and announcing, I have written a book, I actually want you to join me on the journey. And that's because this model that we've built has evolved over the years based on the real work that we've done in schools. It's not just kind of a conceptual thing. It's been something that we've been putting into practice and seeing schools use successfully for years and refining from feedback that we're getting from principals and assistant principals and coaches and district leaders. So I want to do this book a little different. I want to write this book with you. I want to show you the process. I want you to be involved in the process. So I'm going to start writing this book in the next week or two. And I've decided that as I'm writing, when I sit down and write, and I usually try to write every day when I'm not on the road. So, you know, I won't be posting every day, but as I'm writing, every day when I write, I want to spend some time kind of talking to you about what I'm working on. And I want you to actually see the process and see the book evolve. So I'm going to be doing that on Facebook. And I know some of us are, you know, I don't play with Facebook. My kids are on there. Their parents are on there. But if you are on Facebook and you want to follow my journey, then go ahead and give me a friend request. And I'm Robyn Jackson on Facebook, and you'll find me there. You can do Robyn Jackson and put Mindsteps in. That way you'll find me there. And go ahead and send me a friend request on Facebook. And that way you can be a part of the journey. So when I'm writing, I'll kind of stop and talk about like some of the things that I'm thinking about or where I'm getting stuck. I'll be asking opinions or asking for experiences or collecting your stories. And if you want to be a part of that, then go ahead and friend me on Facebook, and then we can write this book together. So I'm really excited about that. The other thing I'm excited about is that we've got one more Builders Lab coming up this year. And this is the last Builders Lab for 2019. And it's happening October 7 through 9. And we're coming to Dallas, Texas. So this is Builders Lab Southwest. So Builders Lab, in case you don't know, if you're listening to this for the first time, Builders Lab is our 3-day intensive where you and I get to work together to figure out how to turn your school into a success story. So we keep Builders Lab really, really small and intimate. We have less than 100 people so that I get a chance to work with everybody there directly. So you and I will spend some time focusing just on your school. This is not a sit and get. This is an intensive. So we're actually doing work together. And in just 3 days, you're going to have a clear plan for exactly what you need to do to turn your school into a success story. And here's the important part. You're going to do it with the people and the resources you already have. You don't have to wait until you get this funding or wait until you get rid of this teacher or get this type of teacher in your building. You can do it with the people that you already have. And so we're going to show you how to get everybody in your school invested in and committed to your vision and willing and able to execute your vision. We're going to show you how to pinpoint what's keeping you back right now. And we're going to work together to remove that obstacle once and for all so that you can move your school forward. And this is the thing. You're going to do it in as little as 90 days. So we're going to show you how in the next 90 days, when you leave Builders Lab, you're going to have everything you need to be able to see tangible results in moving your school. And then unlike a lot of other conferences, we don't just send you home after everything is over and leave it up to you to put what you've learned into practice. As I've already mentioned, we end our intensive with an implementation lab. So you can get started right away using what you've learned with your school to solve your problems, and we're there to coach you. That means that you've already accomplished something before you even go home. And that's not all. So over the next 90 days, we follow up with you to make sure that you stay on track. You actually implement what you've learned. We give you follow-up training. So we walk with you through the entire journey. And because of that, I honestly believe that Builders Lab is the best professional development experience you will ever have. I mean, lives have been changed. And I say that honestly because I've seen it happen. So to register for the intensive, the next upcoming intensive, go to mindstepsinc.com/builders-lab. And if you're listening to this sometime in the future, that link will still work. Go there and see what's the next upcoming Builders Lab and get your ticket and join us. Okay, so today, let's talk about what we're going to be doing. This is season 4 of the podcast. And for this season, I thought what we would do is we would go back to the basics because Buildership is so different. It's so radically different from the way that we've been trained to be leaders. I thought it would be a good idea to revisit some of the basic tenets of Buildership so that you can start slowly but surely evolving from being a boss or a leader into becoming a builder. So today I want to start out by talking about the number one leadership mistake I see leaders making all the time. In fact, all of us have made this mistake at some time or another. And quite frankly, it's why we get so frustrated with teachers. In fact, if you've ever felt like a teacher just wasn't getting it, no matter how hard you tried to help that teacher, then you've made this mistake. Or if you've ever felt really, really frustrated because no matter how much you've tried to motivate a teacher, that teacher still would not move, then you've probably made this mistake. I mean, this mistake is really the source of a lot of frustration that leaders feel, especially when you're trying to move your school forward. And I remember the first time that I realized I was making this mistake. So I'll take you back. I was an assistant principal at the time, and I was working with a teacher who was really, really struggling in the classroom. She wasn't planning for students. Every lesson just felt phoned in. Her classroom management was, pretty bad. And every time I would go into her classroom, it seemed like all of a sudden she'd perk up and start teaching. But I knew that as soon as I left, she was going to go back to, scrolling through her phone or letting kids do whatever they wanted to do. And the kids were going to be suffering. So I wanted to help this teacher, and I tried everything. I tried modeling strategies for her, and that didn't work because every time I taught her class, she would just sit in the back and zone out while I was doing all of her work. In fact, she loved when I modeled lessons for her because it was like getting, like a free substitute teacher for a few minutes, and she could just kind of relax in the back and watch me teach. So I tried meeting with her to go over lesson plans. And I thought maybe if I could help her plan better, then she would execute better. And I wanted to help her develop, some kind of instructional focus for her lessons. And every time I did that, she'd give me some, kind of half-hearted lesson plan that she, copied from other teachers or she dug up from several years ago. And then she would just passively sit there while I tried to go through it with her. And sometimes she would just say, look, just tell me what you want me to do. Has that ever happened to you where teachers just tell me what you want me to do? So that didn't work. So I tried to get her to work with other teachers. But after a minute, the other teachers resented having to work with her because they were doing all the work and she would just sit back and let them do it. So I tried to send her to some training, but she just sat back in the room and scrolled through her phone through the entire workshop. I tried having a coach work with her, but she resented the coach. She said she was fine. She didn't need any support. And she was kind of mean to the coach. She wouldn't, invite the coach in, and she would just kind of do the same thing to the coach as she was doing to me. So I said, okay, I'm going to ramp things up. I'm going to get her in her classroom more. I'm going to try to give her feedback. I thought maybe if I could help her see how bad she was, maybe then she'd improve. So I was in her classroom all the time. I mean, at least once a week. And I tried to sit down with her afterwards and go over my feedback. And she would just sit there and just kind of endure my feedback, or she might try to argue with me over my feedback. But in the end, she never acted on my feedback and nothing changed in the classroom. So finally, I wrote her up. I put her on an improvement plan. And now this was interesting because once I had her on the improvement plan, she actually did improve, at least enough to get off the improvement plan. But as soon as she was off the improvement plan, she went right back to doing things the way that she was always doing them before. And now I am really frustrated. So I did what I was trained to do as a leader. I started trying to evaluate her out. I started building a case for dismissal. And immediately she started to fight me. She called her union rep. She demanded that he be present at every meeting. Whenever I entered her classroom to observe her, she tightened up. She would shoot me an evil eye and she started to teach the kids. But I knew that as soon as I left the classroom, she's going to go back to what she was doing before. And it just kept getting worse and things got more and more tense. She started talking about me in the staff lounge to anybody and everybody who would listen. And what she was doing was she was sowing a lot of distrust. She told people that I was out to get her and that it was personal. And she complained so much that it did start to erode the trust of the rest of my staff. I mean, even the other teachers who thought, she wasn't doing a good job and they knew she wasn't doing a good job or she wasn't effective in the classroom, even they begin to wonder, okay, she's treating this teacher this way. Am I next? Is she going to come after me this way if I don't tighten up? And it was creating tension in the entire culture. And it also started to get to me personally. I mean, has it ever happened to you? Have you ever had a teacher who you felt really needed to go, but the process of getting rid of that teacher was so emotionally draining that it started to create this kind of constant low-grade stress for you? Well, that's how I felt. I was spending so much time and energy trying to get rid of this teacher that I had very little left over to do the work that I actually wanted to do. But here's the thing. I felt like I couldn't move my school forward as long as that teacher was still in my building. So I felt like I had to get her out or we were just never going to move. Well, one day things came to a head. So I was meeting with her to go over my latest observation with her. And as usual, she'd perk up when I was in the classroom. So I couldn't get her on anything too egregious. But I was still trying to, find something. So I was sharing with her this feedback and it's the same feedback I had given her before, I noticed your students took over, 10 minutes to move from one, whatever. I don't know. Like I was doing the whole, I noticed that your students did, blah, blah, blah. And I was just about to go into my reflective questions and I don't know, something snapped. I just couldn't take it anymore. I just couldn't endure playing that feedback dance one more time. I knew I was going to ask, what could you have done to get your students more engaged? That's the question I was taught to ask, but I already knew what she was going to do. She was just going to stare at me or blame the kids or offer some useless strategy or, whatever. I just couldn't stomach another one of those conversations. So I just lost it. I just asked her, look, do you even want to be here? And she looked at me in shock at first, but then she kind of said, okay, we're going to play this. Let's do it. So, she was sitting there and she was kind of trying to feel me out. And I just said, no, let's do this. Let's be honest. So I looked at her again and I said, no, seriously, do you even want to be here? Because I've been giving you feedback for months now and nothing is happening. And so she squared her shoulders at me and said, okay, let's bring it. She said, look, you haven't been giving me any feedback. You've been trying to get rid of me. So no, I don't want to be here, but I'm not going to let you drive me out either. Boom. There it was. And there's the truth. And that's when it hit me. All this time, I'm trying to help her improve her skill, but she didn't have a skill problem. She had a will problem. And it was at that moment that I first realized that I was making a crucial mistake. And it's the same mistake I see leaders making all the time. You cannot solve a will problem with a skill solution, and you can't solve a skill problem with a will solution. So this teacher had a will problem. She didn't want to be there anymore. But instead of addressing her will problem and trying to solve that, I swooped into her classroom with all of my feedback and modeling and coaching and support. And all of those are skill solutions. They didn't work, not because she was some horrible person who was cheating students of an education. They didn't work because they were the wrong tools. You can't solve a will problem, which is what she had, with a skill solution, which was what I was bringing. And so in that conversation, I looked at her and I just felt horrible. I mean, she was right. I was trying to get rid of her, but that's what I'd been trained to do. And for the first time, I saw things through her eyes. She knew she wasn't effective in the classroom. My feedback wasn't telling her anything that she didn't know already. The problem was she didn't care. She no longer wanted to be there. And the moment that I started going after her, she felt like she had to fight for a job that she didn't even want. And so we were, both forced into our corners and fighting over something that wasn't even the issue to begin with. And it was a really humbling realization. And so after a moment of complete silence, she told me, I don't want to be here, but you're not going to force me out. I finally swallowed my pride and I just said, look, I'm sorry. And she looked at me like she couldn't believe I was apologizing. And so I said it again. I'm sorry. And at that, she softened a bit. I don't think she expected me to apologize. And she really kind of seemed unsure about what to say next. And so I just asked her, look, if you don't want to be here, where do you want to be? And then she just sighed and she started getting really emotional. And she just said, about a year ago, I bought a little cottage on the lake. And I go there on the weekends and it's so peaceful and I love it there. I'm just tired, Robyn. And all I can think about is sitting on my little dock outside of my cottage and watching the lake. And that's where I want to be. And so I asked her, well, why don't you do that? Why don't you go, retire and go spend time at your lake? And she said, I can't retire. I've got 2 more years left and I need the money. I can't afford to. I just have to get through 2 more years and then I can afford to retire. Now, let me pause here because I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, what about the kids? Do the kids have to suffer through 2 more years of her just so that she can make it to retirement? I mean, these kids don't have a luxury of 2 more years of lost learning. And you know what? You're right. We can't afford 2 more years or 2 more months or even 2 more weeks of what she was doing to kids. So, I'm with you there. But the solution is not to try to force her to improve her skill. I mean, how many times have you done that? How many times have you tried to make a teacher who doesn't want to be better? It doesn't work. You're wasting your time. The solution is not to double down on try to get rid of her either. This teacher knew how to avoid dismissal. She knew how to turn it on when I or anybody else came into her classroom. She knew how to get off the improvement plan. And she was motivated to avoid dismissal because the whole reason she was there was because she couldn't afford to be dismissed. So you can go after her if you want, but the likelihood that you're actually going to win is slim and you know it. So what do? Well, if you're a boss, your only solution is what I call guerrilla warfare. So you give her a classroom with a broken heater so she's freezing all the time, or you give her 5 periods of study hall, or you do stuff to make her life miserable so maybe she'll leave on her own, or maybe you turn the parents loose on her and encourage them to complain about her to the district to see if you can force her out. And you know what? Nobody wins when you do that. And there's always collateral damage. And the collateral damage is usually your students. Plus, it kills your culture. And even the teachers who believe that that teacher should be gone, they're going to start to balk at your tactics and wonder how long before you start treating them that way. So it erodes trust. It's just not a good move. Don't be a boss. Now, if you're a leader, your only solution, if you're not going to be a boss, is that you have to try to work with her until you can either evaluate her out or hope that if she stays, you can make her better, or maybe she'll get a transfer list. It's a lot of hope and praying and so what do? You give her more feedback, skill solution. You offer her more support, skill solution. You document everything in hopes that she'll either slip up or that you'll have such a thick file that the sheer preponderance of evidence will finally convict her. In the meantime, you're spending so much time with this one teacher that you have very little time or energy to do the work that you really want to be doing and moving your school forward. But if you're a builder, then you already recognize that skill solutions won't solve will problems. So instead, you shift your focus. Instead of continuing to do something that isn't working, you start using the right solution for the right problem. And in this case, you're going to start using will solutions to move teacher will. That way, you can make progress with the teacher and help the teacher actually want to be there, or help the teacher to choose to leave on her own. Either way, your culture stays intact because your other teachers see how you've handled this one teacher, and they actually start to trust you more because they see that you're being above board. And your students don't suffer because the teacher is either getting better or the teacher chooses to leave on her own. Either way, it works. And the reason it works is because you've used the right solution for the right problem. So that's what I did. I finally figured out that I was using the wrong solution for the wrong problem. So right there in that meeting, I made the shift, and it changed everything. Instead of bombarding her with more and more skill solutions, I shifted to a will solution. And by doing that, it changed everything. I said to her, okay, look, I see that you really don't want to be here, and that's probably pretty frustrating. And she nodded. And I continued to talk. And I said, what's more, I bet you already know that you aren't being effective in the classroom. And that's probably pretty frustrating as well. And at that point, she hung her head and she started to, tears start coming down her face. And she said, look, I know I could be doing better. It's just that I don't have it anymore. If I could retire now, I would. I know I'm letting the kids down, and that just kills me, but I just don't have it. And I nodded sympathetically, and then I handed her a tissue. And then I said, okay, so we have a dilemma. You need 2 more years to retire, but another 2 years of this will be torture for you and for your students, right? And she nodded and blew her nose. And then I said, look, at the same time, we can't put students through 2 more years of this. They deserve a teacher who wants to be here. And she nodded, but I could tell she was starting to tense up again, and she was starting to brace herself because, I'm talking about the kids and what's right for the kids. And she was just ready for me to say, so you're going to have to, buck up. But what I said instead was, I said, look, our job is to find a way to help you get the 2 years you need for retirement without making the students suffer. And I think that shocked her a bit, because she was expecting me to kind of give her a lecture on why she's got to muscle through. And I didn't do that. Instead, I asked her to give me a day or two to think about some solutions, and I would get back to her. And then I asked her, look, in the meantime, would you promise to give students your best effort over the next couple of days until we can come up with a solution? And to my surprise, she agreed. She said, yeah, I can do that. So I got to work. And it's a long story, but after looking at her certifications and looking at the teacher contract and talking to the union, I discovered there was this kind of way for us to get her to finish her last 2 years out of the classroom, but still at her same salary. And one of the ways to do it was she could choose to become a media specialist. So I broached the idea with her, and to my surprise, she got kind of excited because it turned out that she really loved teaching the research project to her students. And she was actually excited about the idea of supporting students in the media center in that way. So there was an opening for a media specialist at another school, and she interviewed and she got the job. And so after spending the better part of the school year trying to solve this will problem with skill solutions, once I used the right solution, the problem got resolved in under a month. And that was the first time that I realized that will problems cannot be solved by skill solutions and vice versa. You can't help a struggling teacher improve with just an inspirational speech, and you can't help a resistant teacher improve by sending them to a workshop. It just doesn't work. You need the right solution for the right problem. You can't solve a will problem with a skill solution, and you can't solve a skill problem with a will solution. Now, I bet right now you could look back over the last 12 months and you could recognize a time when you've made the same mistake. It's a mistake we all make, and it's because of our training. It's not even our fault. This is the way we were trained to do it. You see, most of us have only ever been trained with skill solutions. I mean, think about the leadership training that you've gotten in the past. Most of it's designed to improve teacher skill. We learn how to model lessons and give teachers feedback and provide support and provide resources and get into the classroom and pair them up with other teachers. And all of those are great, but all of those are skill solutions. And so if the only training we've ever received is focused on skill solutions, then every problem looks like a skill problem. You know, one of my favorite sayings is, if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And it's so true. If the only training you've ever received is skill training, then every problem looks like a skill problem. But that's not the case. Not every problem is a skill problem. Sure, sometimes a teacher struggles because they don't have the skills they need. And for those teachers, coaching and feedback and support and resources and etc., they're just what they need to improve. But sometimes a teacher struggles not because they don't have the skill that they need, but because they're not motivated to improve. In that case, you can do all the coaching and feedback and support and resources you want. It's just not going to work because they need a will solution. And that's why one of the first things that we teach at Builders Lab at day one is we talk about how to tell the difference between a skill problem and a will problem. And what we learn is that a skill problem is a matter of can the teacher, and a will problem is a matter of does the teacher. And it's an important distinction to get right at the very beginning. You've got to understand whether you have a will problem or a skill problem first so that you can choose the right solution. So, if you're frustrated by a teacher because you've been working with that teacher for weeks and months and maybe even years, and you've not seen that teacher change, then you need to ask yourself, am I making the number one leadership mistake? Am I trying to use a skill solution to solve a will problem? Or am I trying to use a will solution to solve a skill problem? If you've tried everything with a teacher or a team and they are still not moving, then maybe go back and examine whether or not you're using the right solution for the right problem. Trust me, once you start figuring out whether or not you have a will problem or a skill problem first, you'll save yourself a lot of frustration. And when you choose the right kind of solution for the right kind of problem, you'll resolve that problem a lot faster and a lot more decidedly so that you can spend your time and your energy on work that really matters to you. So stop beating your head against the wall, trying to use the same solution over and over and over and over again. If it's not working, take a step back and ask, wait a minute, is this a will problem? And if it's a will problem, then you need a will solution. Or ask yourself, is this a skill problem? And if it's a skill problem, you need a skill solution. So figure out first, is this a will problem or a skill problem before you start jumping to a solution, and make sure you're choosing the right solution for the right problem. And it's going to save you a lot of frustration. Now, if you'd like some help determining whether or not you have a will problem or a skill problem, or if you want to learn some will and skill solutions that actually work, I want to invite you to join us at the next Builders Lab, because we're going to spend 2 of the 3 days just developing will and skill solutions to help you resolve your biggest challenges, remove your biggest obstacles, and get every teacher in your building willing and able to achieve your vision for your school. So here's the thing. Builders Lab is about figuring out, we start out day one, Is this a will problem or a skill problem? How do we figure that out? And then we go into will and skill solutions. And the reason we do that is because I want you to be able to achieve your vision for your school with the people and the resources you already have. You don't have to wait. See, once you understand this is a will problem, this is a skill problem, and then you use a will solution to solve a will problem and the right skill solution to solve a skill problem, you can actually achieve your vision with the teachers you already have. You don't have to wait. So that's really important, and it's a powerful thing. And if you want to learn how to do that, our next Builders Lab is happening October 7 through 9 in Dallas, Texas. And you can get your tickets at mindstepsync.com/builders-lab. And if you're listening to this episode sometime in the future, just go to mindstepsync.com/builders-lab, mindstepsync.com/builders-lab to find out when the next Builders Lab is and get your ticket. Now, before we go, a couple of things. One, are we connected on LinkedIn? If not, let's connect on LinkedIn. That's where you can ask me questions or give me feedback on the episodes or ask about future episodes. So people go to LinkedIn and they send me messages and they're saying, hey, can you do an episode on this? And then if it makes sense, I do an episode on it. So that's a great way for us to connect. And I'm Robyn Jackson at MindSteps, and you can find me on LinkedIn. Or if LinkedIn is not your thing, let's connect on Twitter. I'm Robyn_MindSteps on Twitter. And it's a great way to ask questions, give me feedback on the episodes, etc. And then don't forget, I'm going to start writing my next book, and I'm going to be doing that on Facebook. So I'll be showing you excerpts from the book. I'll be talking about my thinking around the book. You will join me for the entire process. And if you want to do that, I'm Robyn Jackson on Facebook as well. And it's Robyn with a Y for all of those. Okay, so let's talk about next time. Next time, we're going to continue exploring some of the basic tenets of buildership by talking about your vision. But don't worry, we're not going to be crafting long, wordy vision statements or doing corny visioning exercises or anything like that. That's what bosses and leaders do. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to examine why so many teachers never truly buy into your vision. And you're going to discover how you can take your boring, uninspiring vision and make it so compelling that your teachers won't be able to resist it. In fact, they're going to be so inspired by this new vision that it's actually going to start to change your culture. And you're going to be able to take your vision and make it so compelling that your district will rally to support it. You'll actually start to see a change, not just with your teachers, but you'll start to see a change with how your district interacts with your school. It's pretty amazing. So tune in next time to find out how to sell your vision like a builder.
Thank you for listening to the School Leadership Reimagined podcast. For show notes and free downloads, visit schoolleadershipreimagined.com. School Leadership Reimagined is brought to you by MindSteps, Inc., where we build master teachers.